all, and I think I've started the recording as well. So
No,
perfect.
it didn't work. It still said start recording because you weren't presenter yet.
Okay,
Okay, it started now. This
cool,
meeting is
awesome.
being recorded. Okay.
Okay, okay,
Sorry, students.
perfect.
Anyway, okay. I'll let you go on and I'll post the admin stuff later.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
No worries. Yeah, it's one of those days. Don't worry at all. Okay, cool. So just let me with a thumbs up. Tell me if you can see the presentation, and then we can get the ball rolling. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So for anybody that's new on the group, here is my contact details. Quickly take a pic of it, but I'll send it later on. It is loaded on the Teams site as well. I've posted my cell phone number in the chat as well, and afterwards, whenever you can basically send me a WhatsApp, and I'll add you to the group. Okay, so today, what I wanted to do was that we look at nearly chapter 3, and then a lot of focus on that will be on the assignments that or you needed to hand in, which maybe now is again extended, or assignments that are still coming. So let's look at, I'm not, as always, what I've done is I've shown what the chapter is about. I've shown what the nearly what your learning objectives are out of this chapter. I think last week we covered total revenue, total cost, and your profit functions. We did also look at the break even. So this week it's nearly taking it a bit further, um, and it's looking at things like equilibrium. It's looking at simultaneous equations, so looking to solve certain areas of a graph. So I think let's just get into it. I think this one was, and I'm not now 100% sure which assignment. I think it is assignment 3. It can be assignment 1 as well, so I'm not 100% sure. But if you have your assignments with you, you can just, somebody can maybe just make a comment as well that we can just, I just copied it into this and now to start working on it. So I'm hoping, I think it's assignment 3, but it could have been 1 as well. Okay, so basically in this section of the work, we need to find the equilibrium volt time. And basically the equilibrium is where your one line is equal to the other one. So basically where it cuts the two lines. So that will be your equilibrium line. So it doesn't need to say that is where it will break even, but that is your equilibrium line. So let's quickly check. So the easiest way to do this is to say, okay, my one equation is equal to the other one, and that is where the equilibrium will be. And then normally it is, well, they want you to work out what is the x value, they want you to work out what is the y value for that equilibrium, so that you can say at that point that is where the equilibrium is. So let's look at specifically that. So we need now to calculate the equilibrium. So interesting for me, and again, what I would, if I look at this, a tip is Strangely enough, if you look at those two, it's just that the two are basically, first it's the X and then the Y, so 32 and 50, and then 50 and 32. So normally I would have said, okay, that nearly tells me it's one of those two. That is probably the answer, but that is just, it could be anything else as well. So we're not going to say that is the answer, but nearly, again, if you pressured for time, you look at the exam, I would have probably said, okay, let's guess one of those two, but let's work it out. So the coordinates of the intercept are, so let's just see how we're going to do it. And I assume with that sentence there that they are referring to that intercept there. Otherwise, it would have been a 0 and not the intercept on the y or the x-axis. So I assuming it is the intercept of the two lines. So if it is the intercept of the two lines, the one must equal to the other. So it is 50 minus 0.6 q is equal to 20 plus 0.4 q. Okay, so the other thing that we just need to make sure is, so the x is represented by the q, and the p is represented by the y. So when we have the x and y, we know it is actually q and p. So that we just know that that is the points that we are also referring to, so that we don't get confused, because it is probably going to be a 50 and a 52, but then that we know where we need to plot it. So as always, I like to work with positive numbers, so I'll take the 0.4 to this side. So 0.4 plus the 0.6 is actually 1. So we have 1q on this side. If I, oh, wait, there was a negative. So nearly got that one wrong. Still want to use the positive, so I'll rather take it to the other side. So 0.6 taking to that side, so this side becomes the q. The 20 I take to this side, so it becomes a minus, so 50 minus 20 is 50. So I know my q value is 50. Okay, so then basically there is my q value as 50. So I could have said option 2 is the right answer. What is very interesting is one could also, if you get it wrong and you said P is equal to 50, there would have been two other options for you to choose from. So let's just make certain that we are doing it right. So in any of the two formulas, you can put that 50 back. So I would put it back into that one. So my p-value is equal to 20 plus the 0.4 times 50. And that will give me the 20. That would have given me 12. So the 50 over 20 plus the 12 is equal to 52. So just to make that sure that you're working with the right one. Okay, so that is nearly if you look at the equilibrium and how to get to the coordinates of the equilibrium, it's basically where the two lines cross one another. And that is then your equilibrium point. Okay, everybody happy with that? So I think let's first get a check-in on that if you are comfortable with that. We are still a small group, so if you want to quickly ask a question on that, you can just give me a thumbs up and say, or you can unmute and just quickly tell me if there's any issues, if I must explain something again. Otherwise, we'll try the next one. I do think this is from assignment 3, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, otherwise we're going on to the next one. Are you guys happy? Okay, so let's go on to the next one. And I first thought that question 6 might be an easy one, until I saw, oh, okay, they're talking about consumer surplus, they're talking about producer surplus, none of the above, which I normally don't want to go into. We're talking about price elasticity. So question 6 is actually, let's be honest, a terrible question. A perfect question for them to test that you nearly understand this chapter and the previous chapter, because this nearly covers everything. Okay, so let's look at that graph. So that graph would have been, let me just copy it into, okay, so let's just copy this into here. We can make it a bit smaller as well, but at least then I don't need to make a graph of it. Okay, so basically we've got that point, that is the 30 and the 32. So let's look at certain things. Okay, so 30 or 32 units are produced to break even. Okay, we don't really know, but to say 30 or 32, that is probably not gonna, and I think what is important, at the intercept. So they tell us at the intercept, so you can't at the intercept have 30 or 32 units are produced to break even. So it can't be both. So it's definitely not that one. Equilibrium is reached when 30 units are produced at 32 units, or at 32 Rand per unit. So equilibrium is reached where you are basically producing 30 units. So on that line, we had 30, and the price of that was 32. That is actually, equilibrium is reached when 30 units are produced at 32 Rand per unit. So that would have been my answer to that. What did you guys say? You guys are probably still working on this if it is assignment 3. But what did you basically get out of this? Or haven't you looked at it yet? I don't mind if you haven't looked at it. So it would be interesting to find out if some of you have tried this already, and what did you find? If you haven't, also fine. Don't worry. I know you've got lots of other assignments due, and this is not due for another time. So, is this what you would have done as well? Or let me rather put it that way. would you have done it differently? Is this how you would have tackled it? I would normally stay away from a consumer surplus and producer surplus if I don't need to work it out. We will get to that in a few minutes as well, but let's quickly check if that was 52, that's 50. My price there is VAT cut off, so we have the 50. My price there would have been the other cutoff, so it is 20. So if I wanted to, and now the question is okay, cool. Thanks for that, Haley. So is VAT producer surplus or consumer surplus? And is VAT producer surplus or consumer surplus? So which one is the top? Which one is the bottom? Okay, so I think it's also, so yeah, you haven't, so this is actually a nice way of nearly saying for assignment 3 to look at it and work with me on it. Don't have a problem with that at all. And then it's also nearly a learning how to look at it when you actually do look at it later on. So that would have been, I think, your consumer surplus part. That would have been your producer surplus part. Your consumer and your producer surplus is done with the same formula. There is a few questions in here on that, but normally the formula of that is half time base times height. So we'll definitely get to that, but then it would have been a half base, which is that part. So it would have been 50. So let me just get another color. So that is your consumer surplus part. So the difference between the 50 and the 50 and the 32, that is your height. So that height would have been 18. So your consumer surplus would have been a half times 50 times 18, which gives me what, 180 or something like that. Let's quickly, 18 times 0.5 times 50, 270. Okay, so we will get to a few of those questions. So at least you could have seen it is not that. Point elasticity, if you don't need to do it, you don't do it. So that is nearly, and I think also what's important nearly how you can look at this question is, the question is all about the equilibrium and what is happening at the equilibrium stage. And I think that is quite important, that, and what you also now will see is, so what they've done with this question is nearly unpacking those 4 options and said, okay, for the first one, there's a 50 and a 32. The second one is the one that makes sense. At point 50 and 52, we have the equilibrium. Here they used the 68 to say, and the 50 to say, well, let's use those 2 numbers and let's just throw in some other information around it. And the last one is there's the 8 and there's the 70. So it's nearly, if you going into the question and you don't have an idea what to do, nearly let the information that you have guide you in both options. So equilibrium, so around that equilibrium point, what happens? And then they can ask you different other sets of information, but if it's not around that equilibrium point, you can nearly ignore it. So for me, I would have gone to, this is the equilibrium, it tells me what it needs to do, got it, mark it off, go to the next set of questions. Okay, so this was assignment 3. I'm just going to make it that we know it's assignment 3, because there is other questions around assignment 1 and 2. Happy with that at this stage. I think we will go into another one that, as you can see, this is then probably assignment 1, and let's just mark it as assignment 1 so that you can also go and check if you can still change some of the things in assignment 1. This is maybe an opportunity to look at it. So this is an interesting one, because this is not the straightforward equilibrium. So notes, it's on the chat, or not on the chat, it is on the Teams side, but I see you also logged in as guest, so that maybe means that you won't be able to get to the team site on my UNISA side. So Nomfundo, I would also, later on, I will just share my WhatsApp number again, and I'll share the note on our WhatsApp group as well later this evening, that you also get the presentation. I think Claudine will later on can tell again. I think if you send the email to the CT-TUT, they can just register you that you're not logged in as a guest. Okay, so let's look at this one. So this one, I just want to go to the red again. So when I originally looked at this, I was like, okay, this is easy. Price, quantity, looking for equilibrium. So normally then it is the one equal to the other one. But look at what they also are adding into this. Okay, so they're adding the tax component. And I want to check where that is, because it is probably coming later in the things that I have been, so it only comes in here. So you can see when I prepared this, I was not really reading it 100%. So when there is a tax component introduced, this is what you need to do with that tax component. So when a fixed tax per unit is imposed on a product, the producer will receive the price minus the tax. So that is P minus 2. So I nearly want to say, let's copy that in. It is for this one. Let's see if I can paste it in here. Let's crop it a bit, when at least when you are also going through this part again, you will have that component. Let me just quickly, as we do this, let's just make it clear that that is part of. Okay, cool. Okay, so basically what they tell us is, and let's read it again. The producer will receive a price P minus tax. So the supply function, I think that is important. the supply function will have that tax component. So if you look at this, the supply and the demand function, which one will have the impact? So what would you guys say? Out of this, what they are telling us, the impact will be on the supply. Okay, so what will change in that function? So what will we need to do? You guys, I think you guys already did it for assignment 1. So what did you do in assignment 1? Or did you solve it without including the R11.50 tax? Or did you impose the tax? And how did you do it? Anyone can unmute. I am really not worried if you quickly have a chat with me on this. We are still a smallish enough group to quickly have a chat around this. So let me pose you a question. What did you actually do in the assignment? And not, yes, Colleen.
I managed to get 69. I have no idea how I managed to get 69. So I just chose that one. I managed to get 69.
Okay, so you just okay, so have you used the R11.50 in your equation or not?
Yes, I tried to add it. I tried to minus it. I don't know.
Okay,
I did this question numerous times and eventually I got 69. I was like, right, that's it. I'm moving
okay,
on to the next one.
Cool. Okay, so anybody else, what would you have done? Okay, have a nice. So is that what the rest also did? So basically, the change happens on this side. So your original formula will just have that minus the R11.50, and that will be equal to the 25 rand, or 25 plus 7.5Q. So it will be interesting if we get to the 69. I would have looked at this, and strangely enough, I would have guessed between those two. And yeah, so not to say that it's not 69, but I'm just like, if there's two that are very close or very similar, then I probably will go for that. But also, I can be totally wrong, because if you look at that difference between those two is only R11.50, which also doesn't sound right for me. So it will be interesting. But again, in this exam, I would have probably looked at this and say, okay, I don't have enough time going between the two questions. And that will then also, yeah, okay, cool. So let's quickly, so that is your one. So let's just then change it so that it is still, the PS will be equal to 36, because you take the R11.50 over 36.5 plus 7.5 Q. Okay, cool. I see option 3. So we will talk about my or Muhammad's Koli method. So Muhammad, I did add to our WhatsApp group as well. He's a previous student that likes to be on the group. So I'll so basically we then have those two sets of equations, and then to get to the equilibrium, we need to say the one equal to the other one. So it is 36.5 plus 7.5Q will be equal to the 255 minus 4Q. I hope that is what everybody else also did. So now let's get calculator involved in here. So I'll take the 36.5, I'll take over to the 255 to subtract it on that side. So I get 218.5 on this side, which is a positive number. I would have moved that over to this side. So it is 11.5. So basically 218.5 divided by 11.5 gives me 19. Okay, so Q, I do get 19. And now you need to put it back into one of the original equations. So can that be the difference? So if you, okay, this is actually quite sneaky, because let's put it back, and this is where the difference will come in. So if you put it back into that equation, you get the 19 times the 7.5, which gives you 143.5, plus 25 will give you 167.5. Okay, so it gives you option 4. But we introduced that 11 Rand 50 as the tax. So you can't, with that number, go back to one of your original formulas, because then you have forgotten about the tax component. So you actually need to only be able to put it into that formula. And that is where that 11.5 difference will come in, that you will then sit with your answer as B is equal to 179. So in this, a few catches, and I think that is important, where I normally say you get your Q, you go back to one of your original formulas, but because there was a tax component, you can't work with your original formula anymore, and you need to work with your new formula. So that just, I think it was a huge catch, because, and you can see that they actually give you the option that you would have used if you put it back into the original. I won't be surprised if the 11.5 tax, if I put it in this one, I probably would have gotten that answer. So the 69 was an interesting one, and Colleen, I would be quite nice to see how you actually got that. But it can also, but it's weird that you got it with one of the, that it was one of the options. So that's not even, so if it was anything else, it would have been, but that you actually got the 69 tells me there is another method that you could actually get to it, which is scary, because you can see the Q is way different, but
yes.
But it's that, yeah, it's actually scary. So it would actually be nice. You don't need to share it with a group, but you can send me a WhatsApp of your working. And just want to see what was the reason for that, because it is scary that it's a huge difference, but that you actually got that option as.
But I genuinely think I'm struggling with these things, and then mapping it back onto the maps, onto the charts.
Yeah, and I think that is why this is a process, and that's why rather that as nearly work through these things, that you can also see and a bit the tips that I give as well, nearly to say, well, I automatically went to that first to say, sheesh, they not there's a reason why they give you two Qs that are very similar, because that is probably the Q answer. It was the same with this one nearly. It was like, it feels to me it must be one of those two because they just swapped it around. So there are more of the price controls and government interventions that I think one can look at. There is an example, so please go through this example. I want to nearly get to one of the other cool. Patricia, you actually was able to join, so I'm hoping that you got somewhere the link that you were able to join. Welcome. So the other thing that I think it's important is whatever you've done with the tax component, the subsidy or when somebody is subsidizing something, it just has the opposite effect. So when you have the tax, you will see what the tax implication was. When it's a subsidy, it just has the opposite. So you basically add that subsidy to the price. And again, the supply function. So I think that is, at least it all happens on the supply side. And I think that is, I don't know if there was a question on adding a subsidy as well. So maybe there's one that I have misread. But that is basically, they can ask you all the tax or they can ask you the subsidy. So basically the one is government puts in a tax. So you would have now seen when we did that. So the implication of a tax was that your Q stayed the same, but the price is more expensive. The impact of a subsidy will be, it can have an impact on your price that can come down, and it can have an impact on your Q as well. So it can be that because someone is subsidizing, the price is cheaper and you can sell more. So just the interesting impact on the two. So that is more the definition and the theory behind it. So let's look at another question, and I'm not sure again if somebody can quickly tell me, is this assignment 1 or 3? I should have actually made that notes in here, but if somebody can quickly tell me if it's assignment 1 or 3, then at least I can just write it down at the top of this one. So if it doesn't look like you've seen it before, okay, assignment 1, cool. So if it is assignment 1, you should have an answer to this already. Okay, so I would, again, if I was pressed in the exam, I would look at this and say, oh, there's a minus 800, there's a 800. I will probably go for one of those two. Again, it can be totally wrong, but that is just how I would have looked at this one to say, strange that they give me a positive and they give me a negative. Okay, so let's look at what they are actually asking us. At break even, the total revenue is equal to the total cost. So that is the portion that I put in, so that you always have this function. So let's look at at the question. So it costs R2.50 to print a paperback book, and it costs R1 to bind each book. Printing and binding setup costs are 1,000. These paperback books are sold to retailers for R4.75. Okay, so quickly tell me, what is your total revenue formula?
R4.57 minus total cost.
Okay, so remember total revenue, so it's for R4.75, which is right, but total revenue is basically times the number of products that you're gonna create. You were talking about profit. So profit would have been total revenue minus total cost. So that is your profit. So your profit would have been the total revenue minus total cost. So that is where profit comes in. And again, I think it's also in terminology. So a lot of times somebody speaks about revenue and it's nearly like an income stream that you're thinking of. So also just with a terminology for this course, it's very specific. So total revenue, basically all the income that you are gathering through the things that you are selling. The total cost is basically the portion that how much does it cost me to put that product onto the shelf or onto the production line, and then you subtract the two for your profit. So your total cost, as in this one above, is fixed cost plus variable cost. So what is your fixed cost? They tell us somewhere here, printing and binding setup cost are 1,000. So your fixed cost is 1,000. Then your variable cost. So to basically put a book on the shelf, you need to print it, which is R2.50 a book, and you need to bind it, which is R1. So your variable cost is actually the R2.50 plus the R1, which is R3.50, times how many products you are going to put onto the shelf. So then they're asking us, find the number of paperback books that must be printed, bound, and sold to break even. Break even is where you basically don't have a profit. So you're not making a profit, you're not making a loss, but you break even. So it is where the two are similar. So basically for break even, it needs to be the 1,000 plus the 3.5Q is equal to 4.75Q. So then again, I always want the one side to have all my positive values. So the 3.5 will go to that side. So 4.75 minus the 3.5 will give me 1.25. And then on that side, I still stay with 1,000. So 1,000 divided by 1.25 will give me, I hope, the 800. It gives me the 800. Okay. So basically, again, I would have got it right with my calculation. The squally way that you would start seeing is communicated on the WhatsApp group is also, I've got this from all of the previous papers nearly. If you don't know the answer, guess option 3. So option 3 this time again was right. But again, when I looked at these two, you need to get the number of paperback books that you're going to print and sell to break even. You can't have a negative number of products that you can't have a negative. It's like, how can you produce negative books? So it's nearly, that was given there, but it is actually not even an option. So I would have, again, in the exam, I would have gone, okay, they give you two options for minus 800. They give you the 800. It's probably one of them. Okay, then the next thing is I need to produce a number of goods. Okay, I can't produce negative, so I would nearly have gone for the 800 from the start. So again, just some tips for you guys as well, but we have covered how the process will work. Okay, so what I also love to do, and I think this one was again out of assignment 1, but just make 100% sure for me, is that they give you two graphs. If it's not assignment 1, at least we can cover another one for assignment 3. But okay, so yes, it is assignment 1. So let's quickly look at this one. So what is that point? It is equilibrium. Okay, so it is the equilibrium point. So let's look at options. Okay, so point A is not break even. Okay, so I think that is again just to make sure. So to get break even, it is where your total cost is minus your total revenue minus your total cost. Sorry, so that is break even. Where the two lines are crossing one another, that is equilibrium. And I think that is just one sneaky thing that they always test in these kind of theory questions. So let's look at line 1, present supply. Line 2, demand. So you say that is how it should be, or is it one that is, so positive slope, negative slope? I always get confused with that. So I even go back to let's go back to where was that nice picture. So demand is always that. So demand is always where was that? So 2 is always demand. 1 is supply. Okay, so that is an option. Point B represents the minimum price consumers will pay. Let's look at supply, demand. That's an interesting one. The area of a triangle ABC. Okay, so we know consumer surplus is that portion. Producer surplus is that portion, just that so consumer surplus would have been that portion. So it's also not that one. Point B represents the minimum price consumers will pay. Whew, I know, because your price will be where it is the equilibrium, so it won't be at that point, because if you're at that point, you basically have zero products. So your Q is 0 at this stage. So at that point, you are producing 0 product. So it can't be that point. So I just wanted to nearly cancel the other ones out. So option 2 is the right option. Okay, that's awesome. I like that. I like that one. I must remember. I will remember that now. So positive, you climb the line, or the ladder. Negative, it comes back to you and it hits you on your head. Awesome. I love that. Positive, negative. Okay, that's easy to remember actually. Awesome. Okay, I will remember that. Okay, so consumer surplus basically, and we'll get to one or two of those options. So consumer surplus, we need to basically calculate that. Producer surplus, just for opposite. So in that scenario, that would have been the small part from a producer surplus. So you will see on the producer surplus, we need to basically just calculate the opposite side. So yeah, I actually did mention it. So in assignment 1, so again, you guys probably would have done this already. I think we did this in the first last week, just to calculate what the price was. But okay, so let's do this. And so I'm just guessing here a bit where things will go through. So, and please, it is not on scale. That will be 255. So we would need to know what that Q is, because we would need to know what that distance is, so that I can say that is my base. And then we need to know what that price is there, so that we need to can say, and we're looking at consumer surplus, that we can say, okay, that is the height. Okay, so those are the things that are needed. So first we need to basically work out what is that point. That point is the equilibrium point, so that is where those two are equal. So 255, minus the 4U is equal to 25 plus the 7.5U. Interesting for me, just when I looked at this, I would have, again, in the exam, probably would have given you two that are very similar, because if I now get a price, I would automatically be able to pick one of those and say that is my answer. So I would have probably given you two different, or two that are very similar. So let's quickly see. So I would move everything again to that side. So it's 11.5 Q. This feels very similar to some of the previous stuff. I would take that to that side. So it is the 255 minus 25, which gives me the 250. So my Q is 250 divided by 11.5, which is 20. Okay, remember Q is equal to 20, so don't fall into the trap that with that one that says P is equal to 20. We don't know yet if P is also equal to 20, but Q is equal to 20. look at where that point is. So we know VAT P is 25. So just also, if we look at that one can't be an option because the P needs to be higher. That one can't be an option because the P needs to be higher. So in my exam, I would have nearly taken out those two options again in the way that I would look at it and just said, okay, we sit with two other options. So let's just see if I put that Q back, that I still get one of those, hopefully, and that I haven't now cancelled out. So I would put in the Q into that one. So 255 minus 4 times 20 is 80, so minus 80 is 175. Okay, so my P must be that. Okay, so that needs to be my answer, but let's just look at the consumer surplus. So consumer surplus, so let's just write in, so if I put it in there, it must be 175. So my consumer surplus is equal to half times the base, that is 20, times the height. The height is basically the 255 minus 175 because that is 175 now. So my height is 80. So it is a half times 20 times 80, which will give me 800. So a half times 20 is 10. 10 times 80 is 800. So we've got the consumer surplus, and then basically just making sure that that was the correct answer. Okay, so that again is showing at equilibrium what they can ask you. They could have asked you producer surplus as well. So let's look at, okay, a different question. Also assignment 1, producer surplus. So let's, before we go on, everybody happy at this stage? There is still a few things that we can work through until we hit 5:30. So if we're happy, let's go on to the next one. So let's look at producer surplus. So the supply function of a certain product is P is equal to 80 plus 5Q, where P is the price, Q is the number of units produced. Determine the producer surplus if a market price is 200. Okay, that is quite interesting. So they're telling us, okay, so again, the supply function is positive. So thanks for the ladder. Now I would remember that. The supply function it is positive. So if you then look at this, that would have been 80. That whole function is 5Q. Okay, so let's quickly check if my price is 0. Okay, so let's just, that is 0. I can work out Q. This is an interesting one. So was be interesting to see what you guys did. Where P is the price and Q is the number of units produced. Determine the producer surplus if a market price is check. am I now wondering? Ach, yes. I was now, thank you. Okay, so this will make it better. So at that point Q, it is 200. Okay, that makes it a bit, and then to work out that Q, we can actually just put in the 200 into that formula. Let's see if that works. Q is equal to 120 divided by 5, so 24. Okay, so that's 24. Can that be as... Okay, so let's quickly check. So I would have then said, okay, but I've got most of my information. So a half times the base, which is 24, times so in theory, that is where the demand line will go through, because that is the market price, so that's the equilibrium. So this part is your producer surplus, that part will be your consumer surplus. Okay, so just to draw that line in for you to see also where your demand is going, that you don't think that now that is still your consumer surplus one. So then it is, you basically need to get that height, which is the 200 minus the 80, which is 120. So then half times that is 12 times 12. So it will, okay, so quickly, unknown user, okay. Where did you get the 40? Because I think that would just be interesting to know where you got the 40 from, because I would have said it is 25 or 24 times a half times the 120, which would have given you the 144. So I just want to understand where you got the Pumeza, if I pronounce your name correctly. Sorry about if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Where did you get the 40 from? And you can unmute. I don't have a problem with that. I just want to understand how you got the 40. Did you say 200 is equal to 5Q?
I'm still looking at my calculations because it's been a while since I last
I
did
know.
this. So,
So
so I just looked at the scrap papers where I calculated. So I'm not sure. I can't really tell you now how I
it
got the
could have
40.
been because what I say, if you said the 5Q was equal to 200, you would have gotten 40.
Mm.
And so you basically forgot about the 80 that was also in that formula. So I think that is so that is also I think this is a great learning as well. So I think I'll rather keep on doing this one. Sorry if I put somebody on the spot. But I think so what they've given us is that formula. So and we can use that whole formula. So when they say the market price, it does mean that equilibrium. So we can use that whole formula to say, okay, we can put that 200 into that whole formula. So, and that is the scary thing, is that for not using the 80, you got the answer. I would have even think if you have put the 200 on this side, you probably would have gotten the 3360. So once again, it is, I think, important really to know the demand, the supply, what market price means, what equilibrium means, and those kind of things.
Sorry to interrupt, but I can explain to you now how I got the 40. And I
Okay.
also do see that the way I drew my graph is incorrect. Had it been I was asked to draw the graph, would have been incorrect because I did it as the minus 16. I drew a line there. I
Okay.
made a point for that, and then I also made a point on the x-axis for 24. So I
Okay.
did the distance for minus 16 and the distance for 24. I plussed those two distances and I got the 40. So that was my distance on the
Okay. Cool.
x-axis. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay. So that is another. Okay, that's scary that there's a few ways to get to that. Okay, so and that's why I also like to draw the graph nearly to nearly just visually get myself into how to get it. Okay, so let's look at. Okay, here was another one, question 14 and 15 in assignment 3, so it's yet to come. But what was for me interesting, so you can see they copied it out of another paper. So they said question 22 and 23 are based on this information. But then they say question 13, 14, and 15. So another tip, a lot of your, and that's why it's nearly, I'll share some of the previous exam papers, some previous stuff as well. A lot of the things are being used again. As you can see here, this was probably taken from or exam paper or a previous assignment. So nice with this one is with the same two formulas, you need to do the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. So this is nearly like an ideal kind of question for me, because you basically can do two of the same with the same formulas. Okay, so let's draw the one. So it goes through 14 there. Let's draw the other one. It goes through 50 there. There will be your equilibrium. So we need to put the two into place. Then we will get VAT price. So VAT price we will be able to use basically for year for the producer surplus and year for the consumer surplus. And then we'll get that Q value as well that we will use. The scary thing is look at the answers are exactly the same. So it can be that again, and another thing is I would normally have thought, okay, we do consumer surplus first, we do producer surplus second, just because that is how it's on the graph. They ask it the other way around. So that already can catch you out nearly in the exam, that you think you are just first doing the one and then the second one. So let's solve that quickly. So let's solve the equation to get the P value and the Q value. And then we can okay, so again, I like all my values to be positive. So taking the 3 to this side, it's 4.5 Q. Taking the 14 to this side, I need to minus, so 50 minus 14 is 36. So 36 divided by 4.5 is 8. Okay, so even 8 is one of the options, but that is the Q value. We still need to find out what the P is as well. So we will just substitute the 8 into any one of those two because we haven't done any changes. I would substitute it into that one just because I don't want to work with a decimal. So 3 times 8 is 24. So 50 minus 24 is equal to 26. So you can see 26 is lying very nice in between those two. So at least we know that we have calculated it correctly. So first we need to do the producer surplus. So 26 minus 14 is 12. 12 times 8 times a half. So that would give us the answer of 48. So the first one is 48. Then the producers or the consumer surplus, the 50 minus the, let's just do that. So the consumer surplus, 50 minus 26 is 24. 24 times the 8 as the base, times height, times the 0.5. So that gives us basically 24 times 4, which I think it's 696. So the consumer surplus one is option 3. Okay, so that is basically how we did question 14 and 15 in assignment 3. I think this is quite nice in assignment 3 that that you're working with the same information. The trick here is to remember which one is for producer surplus and which one is for consumer surplus. And as you will see that both basically have the same answers. So if you did it wrong, you would have gotten an answer for that question. Okay, let's quickly have a check in. Everybody okay up until now? We've got about 10 minutes left. Obviously, we're not going to get through everything, but let's look at. Oh, wait, we've done that. Just want to check Was that the same one that we did? Why does that? Really felt like, yeah. Okay, so there was question 11 of assignment 1, and there I had question 11 of assignment 1 in as well. So I'm going to take that out. Okay, so basically the other thing that is part of this chapter is the linear programming. And we can quickly start with it, but we can even, the next time, we can continue with this. Yeah, I think I just copied in it twice as I was working through the study unit. So the last part is on linear programming. We won't have time to do everything here, but I think nearly question 10 is a nice one to, if we finish off with this one, it's a nice one to finish off with. So in question 10, I think again this is assignment 1, is that we are sitting with, here they give you the nice graph or the table, and out of this table they are telling you you need to solve. So you need to solve maximum of your total revenue. Is it a minimum of total cost? They give you other, so basically that's your profit calculations. That is one of your calculations. Out of that, that's another one. Okay, so, and then they give you these extra comments at the back. So how I look at it always is that, so you're producing something, so your X and your Y is always going to be positive. So because you are producing two products, you can't produce something negative again. So if I look at these options, X and Y smaller or equal to 0 can't be. So I would again even say in the exam, that is not an option. Interesting that they don't have it here. So to be nearly spot on, it should have been included there, and you can look at those two that are very similar in all the instances. So we know that then that one is also not correct. So I would have probably gone with option 2, just because again there was another option that are very similar. But let's look at this. So security gates, for welding, so I would have said let's make welding X. Let's make finishing Y. So for security gate, to make that, you would need the cost of the hours to make it will be 4.5x. Okay, so they did it the other way. So let's just make sure that we align it to what they are using. So they wanted to make it around the hours and not the costing. So then it is around that and around that. So basically that is X, that is Y. And again, depending on how they ask it, you can frame it in both ways. So as you would have seen in that one. So 4.5 hours, so that is 4.5 times X plus the 2.0 times Y, and a small iron manufactured 2 types of scale, the time requirements for each stage of production, Limitations on available hours and the selling price per unit are given. Okay, so hours available is 900. So hours available is 900 or less. You can't have more hours to make that one. Then for the second one, it is basically x plus 2y again, and your hours available is only 400. So out of those two formulas, I already can see that it needs to be option 2, but that's fine. Let's just look at the final one, also the costing. So your total revenue would be the cost of the first one, so it's the 7,200 times x plus 665 times y, and that will be your total revenue. Okay, so that would have been how you would look at question 10. Are you guys happy with that? Is that also what you got in the assignment? If you can still change it for the assignment, you are free to do so. So yeah, and again, it was nearly, I looked at these and I was like, okay, option 2, option 4, very similar, but leaving out one thing in option 4. So I would have nearly automatically gone to option 2 already. Okay, let's do the last one, and then we can call it a day. I think this is again assignment 1. So basically what I'm going to show you is how I would have done this again. So I would look at these formulas and I would nearly say, okay, let's look at that first one. Let's see which one it is on the graph. So let's do that. So how I would do it again is I will find myself the x value and the y value. So I would say, and I'm just going to do it with a 1, and then we can nearly speak through the other. So I would say x plus y, that is your formula, is equal to 13, so that I can get the x and the y. So when y is 0, I know x is 13. And when x is 0, y is 13. So I basically replaced it. When x is 0, basically we say y is equal to 13. When y is 0, x is equal to 13. So that tells me that is my formula. It goes through the two 13s. Then look at that sign. That sign tells me it needs to be smaller. So when I look at the feasibility area, it must lie into this space. So it must be smaller than that line that crosses through the two 13s. So when I look at this, it should be smaller than that. That shows me it's bigger. So option 2 is not an option for you to take. Let's look at this one before we even go into it. So this tells me that your x needs to be bigger than 0 and your y needs to be bigger than 0. So we can't have that portion there because it tells me that both needs to be positive. So option 1 was actually also not an option. So we're looking at option 3 or 4 The first one was that it needs to be smaller. So let's look at your second formula to 8. The same principle. If x is 0, minus y is smaller than equal to 8. So this is where the fun comes in. So we'll get to that one now. When x is positive, or when y is 0, 2x is equal to 8. So 2x is equal to 8, which means that x will be equal to 4. Okay, so basically it is that line. So now the question is it bigger or smaller than that? So we still have that one. So let's see, that again is interesting. So out of this one, how would you have said it will be? So would you have gone with 3 or would you have gone with 4? Okay, so let's quickly check the last one, which is, okay, so again, out of this one, we will now know that it is that formula. Okay, so if I look at, everybody's choosing 3, okay, so I must also then say it needs to be option 3. Okay, so let's quickly, how I would have done it is, so you basically say it will be smaller than that with this formula. So nobody said 4. Okay, so with this formula you would have said it's smaller. Okay, why with this formula do you say it's bigger? And we are over time, but let's quickly discuss this. Why would you say with that formula it is smaller, but with this formula it is bigger? Because I would have nearly said, okay, anybody else? Okay, so I am nearly in agreement with you. So anybody else have anything else to say about this one? Because I want to get your thinking around with the negative signs. Why is it that the one is smaller but the other one is bigger? Because I think that will be important in the exam as well. Please, anybody? Nobody. So did everybody go for 3? Or did somebody go for 4 as well? Okay, so let's quickly look at this. So so your normal formula was a very easy one where both is positive. So remember your formula is normally y is equal to the mx plus c1. Okay, so that is normally how it is. So in the first one, and I think that is very important, and we'll end it there. So the y is equal, so nothing needed to change. If we brought it over, it would have been that. The second one, okay, plus x plus 8. The third one is the 3y smaller or equal to, so it becomes positive, so that is not a problem. Okay, so every time smaller, smaller, smaller. So if you just look at that, so we said smaller, and then I would have said, okay, but we need to go smaller. Okay, but it is not like that. So you guys are right, because it's a negative. I think that is I just wanted to show you and also confuse you, but it is, I think, important for if you see something like this again. Remember, we're working with everything is positive y, so we need to make it a positive y. So when you make that a positive, out of the maths, that changes as well. Okay, so because that changes, it is now y is bigger or equal to. So y is bigger or equal to, so it becomes y we are saying it actually lies to the left of that. So all of you are right. It is this space. So it is option 3. But I just wanted to show you why, with the change in that one, why it actually becomes option 3. So a bit of maths in there, but I think it's important when you get that in the exam to make sure how, because in the exam it could have been that you sit with this formula. And if that was the formula, you would have had that. And if that was, then you needed to change the signage, which would have made it that, which then would have been that option. So just to why I'm really trying to suss out what you guys did is, so in changing the sign of the y, you change the, what is that called, the bigger or smaller than sign symbol as well, and that could have a huge impact actually on your feasibility area. Okay, so for this question, option 3, perfect, was the right one. I just wanted to show you how to get there. If you need it, because they can very easily, if the x is negative, it's fine, then there's not an issue. But when the y is negative, then it becomes an issue if you need to change things. Okay, we're gonna we're gonna stop there for tonight. What I will do is, you can see a lot of this is actually assignment 3. This might be assignment 2 or assignment 1, but most of it is assignment 3. So we'll continue next time with that. No classes next Friday, long weekend, or making it a long weekend. So I think we are back again in 2 weeks' time. Okay. So to the guys that also just didn't join from the start, my cell phone number for a WhatsApp, it is on the team site as well. So send me a WhatsApp and I can add you to the WhatsApp group so that we can do this. Okay. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend, guys, and see you and chat to you again in 2 weeks' time. Okay. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. I'll stop the recording as well, and then it will be available later on